Today's episode is not theory, it is receipts. Google just published an article that's gonna hit every stablecoin issuer, every tokenization team, every custodian, every exchange, every regulator on any chain. The white paper came out today, March 31, as tokenization is projected to open markets exceeding 16 trillion by 2030. And it says that those underlying cryptographic protocols on which they're building remain vulnerable to quantum attacks, and the tokenization should push the value of quantum vulnerable assets way above the too big to fail thresholds. Google gives the line that matters most for everyone who's building right now, that the migration window still exists, but that the margin for error is getting increasingly narrow. This is not just a Bitcoin story. It is a story of any asset that touches any chain: stablecoin, tokenization, and market infrastructure. Welcome back to the control.
Oh, thank you, Daria. I think this is the quickest turnaround we have done in our history of EternaX, and we at EternaX are calling this the Q day. We are calling it the Q day has arrived, and Daria will explain how. But we are really excited about these reports, and there are two reports that came in today, Daria, which is one of them was on the report by Google, and the another was a report on the hardware improvements. And we'll discuss both the reports, and then we will also highlight in this podcast that how these are impacting the institutions and the stablecoin issuers and the tokenization players, how they should take the decision, how they should revisit their infrastructure, and where does EternaX fit in all this. So Daria, starting with Google, what exactly did they say, that changes the conversation? What exactly has happened?
So the paper contributes in a few spaces. One of the biggest actual practical threat contribution is that they have claimed that they have a circuit that is supposed to break Bitcoin and any other elliptic curve keys of cryptocurrencies within 10 minutes. They have not published the circuit, they have published zero knowledge proof that they not know that a circuit exists that can break it, and they specifically done it to not give it to hands of bad actors that may try to actually deploy it and not give them the advantage. So that is the biggest technical contribution. But the biggest regulatory, I would say, contribution that it did is widening the conversation. So much of the quantum cryptanalysis work has been focused either solely on RSA or just on elliptic curves, without looking at the wider threat radius of everything that has been built on top. Some papers just focus on Bitcoin, but it is actually systemic vulnerabilities that have implications for stablecoins, for tokenization, for any securities that's going to come in the coming years, and those remain underexplored. We have a few days ago published a report where we actually named specifically all of the institutions that are exposed, and Google is now basically acknowledging our stance. So Google is explicitly widening the threat model to all of modern on-chain finance, real-world assets, and this is why it also matters so much. It's not only the technical contribution, but it also widens the audience and the stakes that are being talked about.
Got it, Daria. I think this is basically the first time the mention has come of stablecoins and tokenization and their market that is being pictured around 16 trillion. That is coming. So I mean, this is the first time that these players have been named and the chains have been named. So what is the exact mechanism, Daria, which has been described there?
So they mostly talk about in the paper itself about Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they focus most on them, and then they have a review of other chains as well. But the biggest thing is Ethereum administrative vulnerability. So Google says that the top 500 contracts by ETH balance, so the ones that have most total value locked in those contracts, at least 70 of them have holdings of like 2.5 million ETH, and they are at risk of account takeover because of the vulnerability of admin. Google is also giving like a time estimate that private key derivation attack from like the public keys of those smart contracts, if you just take those top 70 that have 2.5 million ETH sitting in them, in a fast clock quantum computer, like cryptographic quantum computer that is based on fast clock architecture, can take less than 15 hours total. That is like the mechanism of the attack. So that once that fast clock computer implements the algorithm that Google talks about in this paper, it can break all of those contracts that are holding all of that money within less than 1 day. Nobody is going to have time to react. And it's not just about like old public keys. It's also high leverage administrative accounts of like exchanges, multisigs, all of things like that that are based on smart contracts that are on themselves based on elliptic curves.
Got it, Dari. I think this is something that we at EternaX have always mentioned, that it is not about hacking all the accounts. It has never been, hacking things in seconds. It can happen in hours also. And I think that is being, kind of discussed and highlighted by Google, that, if you run for 15 hours, you can basically crack all the important 70 accounts and you can take 2.5 million ETH. So I think this is the big critical takeaway here. And how big is the blast radius, Daria? Would you want to discuss that?
So if you think about what we just discussed, just first order exposure, that's already 2.5 million in ETH within day one, plus around like $200 billion sitting in stablecoins and tokenized RWAs that are tied up in those vulnerable contracts. Then second order risks of all of this is bridges, it's oracles, it's guardians, it's exchanges, it's much, much larger. Google doesn't really place exact numbers on those everythings, but we actually do in our report with all of the breakdowns of all the institutions that are exposed, being it JP Morgan, Fidelity, and everybody else. So the numbers are massive. It is potentially like all of whatever is sitting in crypto, and it's growing day by day. So for small balances, it's not that big of a deal that, okay, quantum computer is going to break your specific wallet. But if the trust layer of the whole chain that it's sitting on is getting damaged, everything that sits on top of it is getting damaged. And it's a massive control service of every single user, of every single issuer, and of every single service and ecosystem that's sitting on top of it. So it's system level downstream damage.
Got it, Dari. I think this is where basically you're saying that it is a systematic damage, and it's not just about the consensus layer. It is also about the wallet layer and the transaction layer and everything. And also in the case of Ethereum, it's basically a data availability layer as well. So they have to fight on three fronts, and which we have already discussed in the previous discussions already. So essentially, Daria, if I am a stablecoin issuer or a tokenized fund issuer like Fidelity or JP Morgan or BlackRock or any of those names, what page matters most to me?
So that would be around page 33, as you can see on the screen. Google specifically names USDT and USDC on Ethereum, and then there is a long tail of other assets. But those stablecoins, they are governed by smart contracts. And those smart contracts have a handful of administrative accounts that have very special privileges of the issuer. And those issuer privileges are the right to mint, to burn, to freeze, and to upgrade the contract's logic. Then what Google says that because of past upgrades that have happened to those contracts, the public keys of admins are known on chain. So like we already know who they are. So they are making themselves a very, very easy target for a quantum computer. It's not just like a wallet that has some coins, it's a control over the whole stablecoin on the whole chain. Ability to mint as much as you can, ability to burn as much as you can, take people's money, get their money back, wreck house. So it's an existential risk basically to taking complete control over a smart contract. It's not just a control plane problem. Even if like your reserves that are backing the stable coin are real somewhere in a bank closed in gold bars, or as Tether says, they also have land, the authorization of minting the stable coin is what breaks.
I think what you're hinting at is that any stable coin that has been issued on Ethereum or any of the chains which you will highlight, and we have already given the whole list of the chains which are breaking because of post-quantum and what are the risk surfaces for each. In the report, we will link that report for your viewing purposes. It's a very relevant and exhaustive report, so I would suggest all the listeners and all the issuers to go to that report and understand that it's not just Bitcoin and Ethereum, but it's every other blockchain which does not have this mechanism, and none of them have. So essentially, what you're saying, Daria, is that you lose the control, right? Essentially, it is that anybody can break in, they can mint, they can burn, they can freeze. Basically, I would say, if I was a stable coin issuer or a tokenized fund, I bring, say, Tesla stocks, securitization, tokenization on Ethereum. Anybody can create n number of Tesla stocks if he can break. And then you can have, suddenly you have trillions of Tesla stock, and the market goes haywire. So essentially, this is more of a problem for everybody, not only us, but also Elon Musk then. Because Elon Musk, he derives zero value from blockchain. It's just, just for the fun of it and for the ease of it, we are bringing the assets to blockchain, but we are bringing them to a chain which is, compromised, essentially. So I would suggest that, and we'll discuss in the later parts of this podcast, that why, if you are minting, do not mint on legacy chains which are not PQ safe, because it will come with a burden and you don't want that burden. So makes sense, Daria. What is one chart, people should, from this report, people should just take home and remember?
Well, I think that's the one that's pretty in the very beginning that I'm sharing. It's figure 3, where Google says that this is the algorithms. They make a survey of previous papers done by everybody in the field, and the error correction research. All of that together has been converging and dramatically decreasing the resources that are required to solve important problems on quantum computers over the last 10 years. So the old estimates that people still have in their mind saying, oh, it's going to take millions of qubits to break Bitcoin, or to break elliptic curves, or to break RSAs, create false comfort. They are no longer true. We should update our priors. It's no longer in several decades, and it's no longer millions of qubits. It's now thousands of qubits. And the cost curve has been going down, and the value curve of what's under threat has been going up. The assumptions need to be updated. They have been moving. Serious financial systems should not be built on vulnerable infrastructure.
Got it, Daria. I think after this as well, people will say, oh, there is still time till 2029. I think this chart is the answer to that, is that 2029 is not a exact date. I mean, you can't predict 2029. You can't say it will not happen in 2028. You can only say that we are safely predicting that post-quantum will come or may come in 2029. That's more of a safe prediction. It's not an absolute fact that it is going to happen then. So this is very critical. This chart makes a lot of important conclusions that people should not consider that if, say, a chain is migrating till 2029, then they are absolutely safe, because it does not say that. You are not safe. You're not safe. The Q day, I would say, Daria, you can basically elaborate more on this. The Q day has arrived today. It is today. If you have to act, you have to act today. So give me the hardest Google numbers, Daria, which is not a vibe. These, I need actual numbers. What is it saying?
Yeah, so Google says that they have developed 2 circuits with slightly different assumptions that can break 5.6, the curve that's used in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and most of the other cryptocurrencies. Is 1,200 logical qubits and 90 million Toffoli gates. And the second one is 1,450 logical qubits and 7 million Toffoli gates, 70 million. There's a slightly different time estimates to run, but they have published also a ZK proof of the fact that they can break elliptic curve keys, whatever is being thrown at them. This also says that under the superconduction assumptions, those circuits can run on fewer than 500,000 physical qubits. That's already orders of magnitude less of what we had even 5 years ago, even last year. That architecture allows them to have runtime in minutes. between like 18, 23, give different estimates, or on average, you can have 9 minutes for the first generation of fast clock computers. And 9 minutes is less than Bitcoin block time. So it means that even if your Bitcoins are sitting in like hashed addresses, as soon as you try to send a transaction, it can be intercepted, it can be broken, and your Bitcoins and your anything is gone. So that's why the report actually hits so hard. It's the first estimate that is able to break ellipticals just in time as they are being spent. So these are the concrete numbers from a source that nobody can ignore. It's not just Google. It has like a dozen almost co-authors who are very, very respectable names in the space for decades.
Yeah, definitely, Daria. I think this is basically, we had some solutions out there that, okay, we'll give hash wallets to everybody and, it'll never break. But I think there are two things that you need to take care of is within the transaction submission time as well. If it can happen, then you're also not safe. So what about the Taproot angle here, Daria?
Taproot is, in Google's view, sort of irrelevant to quantum security. So what Taproot introduces P2TR, pay to Taproot, way of encoding, let's say, addresses. They store the tweaked public key directly in the locking script instead of like hiding it behind a hash, instead like in pay to public key hash schemes. The sharpest statement in the Bitcoin section would be that from the standpoint of quantum security, Taproot actually constitutes a regression. So I'm not going to go exactly how they say it. There's a big part of it on it. But Taproot benefits are not beneficial to quantum security, basically. Because now public key are being exposed at rest still.
Got it. I think this was a discussion, around that. Okay, Taproot is a solution for the post-quantum at Bitcoin, and I think now that claim has been refuted, and what you are saying is that Taproot is no more relevant. So, is Google saying panic, or is Google saying Q days tomorrow? What is it actually saying in the paper?
I mean, Google's literally saying that you should start moving, at least if you have not. This is targeted on like convincing the last quantum deniers. So no, Q-Day is not tomorrow and it's not yesterday. There is no actual hardware implementation of what they have published. But their position is very precise and credible because it's still written by the academics. They say that the time that remains before cryptographic quantum computers, it likely still exceeds the time that is needed to migrate public blockchains to post-quantum cryptography. But it's getting more and more narrow with every day that passes. Margin of error, if your upgrade doesn't go through the first time, is basically non-existent. Google literally urges vulnerable communities, and in cryptocurrency, almost everybody is a vulnerable community. They have to begin the transition immediately to at least have some hope to have it timely completed. That is not panic. It says you still have the time if you act now. Then if you don't, you may not have the time anymore. And if you want to do research, if you want to do testnets, if you want to do governance, if you want to do all of that, the blockchains love to do, you have to start acting today.
This is Daria, what you're saying is about the already people who already have I would say minted their tokens in blockchains which are exposed to post quantum, right? This is something for those guys. But I personally would like to alert those people who are trying to tokenize securities, stablecoins, that this is a time of choice. You have to choose right now. Do you want to mint on a chain which requires definite migration and the troubles that have to come with this and the margin of error which is increasingly getting narrow? Or you want to choose a solution that is EternaX where you can mint day one PQ native and do not bother about migration debt. So this has been highlighted very detailed in the report of EternaX already broken. That is the name of the report. We'll tag that report in the description and you should take a look at it. So what changes, Daria, I think there is one more, it is a good day for us. I mean, there are two important reports that got published today. One was Google that you already discussed. The other is one critical report which came from Oratomic, and it's called Neural Atom Paper. What is all about, Daria? What change it has done, which has made the day for us and made it a Q day in true sense?
Right. This is exactly why I call it a Q day. In one day, you have two breakthroughs being published independently from two independent parties, both supported with very high and credible people in the field. So the second paper is from Oratomic. They have came out of stealth with this paper, and they are a quantum hardware company. So Oratomic publishes hardware side breakthrough of achieving quantum computer, and Google publishes algorithmic side breakthrough. Both of this together very narrow the space of security that we still have on elliptic curves and existing chains. So Oratomic claim that the Shor algorithm, that's the same one that breaks elliptic curves, can be executed at cryptographically relevant scales with 10,000 reconfigurable atomic qubits. And atomic qubits is like a hardware way of building quantum computers. Their neutral atom experiments have demonstrated arrays with more than 6,000 coherent qubits. This still doesn't mean that there is a live production attack that's happening tomorrow on the sides. It means that the engineering frontier has been spending best brains and a lot of money and a lot of research acceleratingly moving in a direction that makes the delay very hard to justify. It makes the migration debt closer to pay.
Yeah, absolutely, Daria. I think this is one of the best reports that we have seen so far, and very, very reputed in the ways it has been very well received. Justin Drake himself has tweeted on this and has accepted the advantages that have been mentioned in the report. So I don't think so this can be refuted, and these numbers are really saying something, that we can be broken at 10,000 and we already have 6,000. So I mean, I don't know, in how short duration that gap will close. Absolutely, I would love to have, Daria, honestly, is that, if you have 4 years, 2029, the world says it, Google says it, I would still not want to be very comfortable with just sitting around. I would rather want to do something about it. And I think that's what we'll discuss in the solution segment of this podcast. What is the sharpest runtime number that has been disclosed in that paper, Daria?
Yeah, so Oratomics has been quoting architectures that are most time efficient that can be built to potentially enable runtimes of 10 days to break an elliptic curve key with 26,000 qubits. And that's very easy attack on like dormant keys like Satoshi's coins or the exposed smart contract administrative stablecoin issuers accounts. And a second pair that he has been citing is 97 days for RSA 2048 with 100,000 qubits. That's mostly what encrypts the internet traffic. Oratomic says that those estimates are obviously preliminary and they can be improved with future work, but at least it gives the existing floor that is today. The caveat is not that it's the weakness of the architecture, but they are showing it as a testament of what they can achieve and as a warning to public. Because a lot of takes that I have seen in the space would be like, we're going to wait and we're going to monitor and we're going to see. And today is the day that you're going to have to see.
One interesting fact, Daria, that I'm noticing here is that these guys are, coming from the hardware side of the PQ improvements, and Google is coming from the algorithmic side of the improvements. And if God forbid something happens that, that algorithm is released or somebody develops another algorithm and these guys combine together, then the best hardware with the best algorithm basically means less than even minutes. So things can happen in seconds. And it's all about putting all the pieces together. And one very critical fact, which you highlighted earlier, that Google has not disclosed the algorithm that they have used. they have disclosed the ZK proof of the algorithm, and that says something. So what we understand from this situation is that we will never know what more advances are happening, because everything is going to happen behind the doors. Because we don't know what are the advances are happening, we will never be able to ready ourselves or know a date when we have to be ready. And if we do not know that, I would say that the date to decide to prep for this is today. Because nobody in the future, neither Google, neither Oratomic, or neither any other company in any country across the globe, be it China, be it USA, will tell you that this is the tech we already have. So please migrate. So Daria, let's come to the reality of the things. There are institutions who are doing a lot of things in the space of crypto. They are trying to tokenization. A lot of action has happened at the regulatory end, but they are oblivious to the fact that these advancements are happening. Who name those institutions? I would want the users to understand who are those people. And we have mentioned them in the report extensively. There are 27 institutions that we have explicitly named who are doing things on blockchain, and nobody has a PQ plan. So I would want people to read that report. Daria, please shed some light on this.
Right. There is, in our report, we do highlight 27 institutions that are exposing themselves to vulnerable chains, and there are a few of them that can still make the choice to pull out and not mint on vulnerable infrastructure. We have counted 9 based on the publicly disclosed information that we have found, that we have sourced, be it their reports, be it their talks, be it their articles, but there is certainly a lot more that are preparing and considering. So this is not just like abstract. This is now like very practical boardroom decisions of people that are making the calls. So in the report, we show that at least 9 institutions have their architecture decisions still open, naming directly Wells Fargo, DTCC, Swift, Circle, CME Group, NYC, NASDAQ, Bridge, Stripe, and the G7-10 bank consortiums. Those were the 9 institutions on the top that we have identified that still have the chance to basically not take on the migration debt of quantum threat. Once these names are already this large, this is not just like some people holding some coins in some wallets. It's not no longer a crypto security problem. It's a major financial rails that are making cryptographic choices during the pre-upgrade window and knowingly potentially exposing themselves to quantum attacks on unsafe chains.
Definitely, Daria. I think this is something which and I want you to take extensive names of the chains as well, because this is something which, I know Bitcoin and Ethereum have been discussed, but there are, a lot of other chains which we have mentioned in our report, and where exactly do they fail and why do they fail? That also has been mentioned. This is not a hand-wavy argument for us. It's all in the report, and it is coming from all the secondary resources that they have published. People have, some misconceptions about Zcash, Solana, or privacy chains, that they are, they are post-quantum safe or things like that. But I think those myths have to be broken, and people need to really, really understand that the infrastructure that they are choosing for actions, it is not safe, and they need to take the action today. So moving on to you, Daria, where does EternaX come in? What is the answer? Over to you.
Right, so both our own report and Google's report list a lot of the cryptocurrencies that are exposed. Yes, of course, the top 2 would be Bitcoin and Ethereum, but then there is Solana that's not PQ safe at the moment. There is TRON that has a lot of stablecoin things. It's not PQ safe. Privacy coins, Zcash, Monero, even like Tornado Cash, things like that, are also still based on elliptic curves. They may be slightly harder to crack, but they're not safe. There is Hyperliquid, which now has all of the tokenized stuff on it trading, is also not post-quantum safe. Basically anything that you can name is being threatened. So in our report, we do make 9 verdicts of the 9 top chains that we discussed, and you can dig into that, and the 27 institutions that are issuing them. So the solution that we propose at EternaX is not just that the market has a problem. It's that if your architecture is still vulnerable, you can still make the choice. You should choose a post-quantum native issuance path before you take on to yourself this migration debt and this risk of losing control of your stablecoins, of your securities, and minting money out of thin air before you actually mint first. Because as soon as an asset is minted on a vulnerable chain, it is vulnerable. Even if you secure it later, it's still vulnerable. So out of the 27 institutions that we have surveyed that are already published on classical chains, 0 have said that they have post-quantum migration plans as so far. There is still live design window for some of them before they choose to lock in. But post-quantum native issuance is not just a security response to them. It becomes a distribution advantage for the issuer, for the venue, for infrastructure providers, because now they can credibly say that from day one, they did not launch vulnerable assets. They did not launch on rails that are broken and require some future repairs, because at that time, you basically leave yourself to the benevolence of the protocol team to upgrade someday. Are you really willing to bet trillions on that? So the answer that we think is very clear is that the problem is migration debt, and the solution is to issue an infrastructure that does not create that debt in the first place. So this is where EternaX is positioning itself as a quantum safe infrastructure and the only one that is able to execute on market speed.
Oh, definitely, Daria. I think this is something. This was one of the most critical pieces that we wanted to communicate to our listeners. And I would love to also introduce one more chain which is mostly discussed in these days, and which is Canton Network. And Canton Network has 6 trillion of on-chain assets, 200 billion plus of daily US Treasury repo. It has BNY, BNP Paribas, Citi, Bank of America, Santander, Circle, Broadridge, DRW, Bitco, and everybody under the sun, which is its partners and trading and dealing on and settling on this network. And it is not post-quantum safe. It is permissioned. Visibility does not save the signer layer. It again suffers from the same problems as the others suffer. So these misconceptions should not be spread. Similar is the misconception about Zcash, that it is private, as you had highlighted, and hence it is PQ safe. Its privacy itself is not post-quantum safe. So what we are saying is that not only Zcash will break, your funds can be stolen, but the privacy itself is also not post-quantum safe. We have written down a piece on that as well, which you can find in our blogs. So the whole idea is for us to communicate that we have to transparently disclose the gaps in each and every architecture. And if there is a gap that needs to be addressed, we are not saying that every chain is bad or good. The whole idea is, if there is a problem, address it. At least talk to the people, share it with the people, because there are a lot of hard-earned money that is riding on these stacks. And if there is something, please disclose it to your community, and you might migrate. That's your choice. But we at EternaX suggest that you do not build up that migration debt from day one. Mint PQ native day one with EternaX at market speed. The other sector, last section, Daria, I wanted you to share is, like, what is the market consequence of all this happening?
Right. So a lot of papers so far have been talking about, quantum cryptanalysis as just a mathematical problem. But it is not just a paper problem anymore that we can talk about as a curious mathematical puzzle. It has a very, very real economic consequences of everything that has been built on top of it. And the biggest consequence of that is a migration debt. everything that has been built on blockchains insofar in the 17 years since the launch of Bitcoin is now inherently unsafe. So the window of migration is going to start today, and the call that we are making here is to stop accumulating the migration debt. None of the 27 institutions that issue today published any post-quantum migration plans, and some, like at least 9, have still open architecture windows in 2026. They can choose to not lock themselves into unsafe architectures, into unsafe chains. So the question is not whether the migration debt exists, it's how big it is and how early you are still to not create more of it.
Yeah, absolutely, Daria. There's one analogy that I have for this particular situation, and this was very interesting to me because if you remember the times when there was no seat belts in the cars, there was no airbags in the cars, and in that period, what shifted is that Volvo came up and became big, and Volvo became big on the security because they were the most secure car. And eventually, every other car started having, those seat belts, and it started having those airbags and those security features. But Volvo stood out because they understood that security is the need of the hour. And that is us, EternaX, right now. We understand the need of the hour. We understand that you do not need migration debt. You do not need to take your old car and start fixing up, retrofit it with, those additional airbags or seat belts. We want to give you a car which is secure day one from the company, all stock. So that is what we are saying. And I'll quickly recap, Daria, what has happened is Google is not saying, panic tomorrow. Google is saying that the migration window is still there, but the migration for error is very less. And the transition should begin now and not tomorrow. Google is also saying that this is bigger than Bitcoin. It now is reaching tokenization, stablecoins, and potentially too big to fail levels of values. Because there is 144 trillion of estimated securities, and I'm just talking about US, that is planning to come on chain. So it's a $144 trillion problem right now. The neural atom paper says the hardware frontier is still compressing, and it has come down a lot to 10,000, and we already have a capacity of 6,000. So the gap is compressing, and at EternaX, the answer to that stack is very, very simple. Do not wait to retrofit. Do not create migration debt. Issue on post-quantum native infrastructure, that is EternaX, from day one at market speed. You do not lose your market, you do not lose your market speed, and you also gain distribution advantage because your clients and your users will love the fact that their funds are secure. Be the first one to have quantum secure stablecoin. Be the first company to have quantum secure tokenized securities. Be the first one to have quantum secure tokenized deposits or money market funds. That's all for today, guys. We'll give all the links of all the papers and our paper at EternaX in the description for your review. That's all, and we'll looking forward to the next episode.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and this was the Control Loop. See you in the next episodes.